kid from the bush who grew into a legend in his own lunchtime, former SAS soldier Michael J. Malone has seen it all. This is Never Die Wondering, Mick Malone in his own words, hosted by the man himself, Mick Malone, along with Toby Malone, as they examine this long, storied career in the Australian Special Forces. Join us each week for behind-the-scenes insight, exclusive readings, and brutally honest truths from a true original. Welcome to Never Die Wondering. Welcome to episode 44 of Never Die Wondering, Mick Malone in his own words, a podcast that explores the life and legend of Michael John Malone, OAM. My name is Toby Malone, Mick's son and co-host of this podcast series, joined by the man whose name is in the title, Mick Malone. G'day, Dad.
G'day, mate. How are you?
I'm great. I'm enjoying this most recent sort of foray into your career because it's the exciting part. Did you feel like it was exciting at the time, all of these different adventures that you were going on, getting to travel around and things like that?
Well, certainly an adventure that I said to myself, I'm up for this.
Right.
And being a captain was a different kettle of fish to being an RSM.
Right. That's the next chapter. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But I really enjoyed being an RSM. I was very impressed with the boys from One Commander Regiment.
Mm-hmm.
And but we moved on.
Then, but all these adventures, I mean, given the simplicity of your background and where you'd been, I mean, when your father was there, when you got the commission to captain, what did he reckon? You know, because he was a fairly simple bloke who
never got much out of Dad.
Yeah.
You know, he was pleased to be there with commissioning, but apart from that, you know, I don't think he ever trusted officers.
Right.
All of a sudden, here I am standing there with captain's rank and RSM's rank on the same shirt. Which is about 300 times higher than he ever rose.
Mm-hmm. And then of course, within 6 months of you being commissioned to captain, he was gone.
Yeah.
So he died in May of 1990, which we're just about to come up on. So, or 18 months, I guess, because you were commissioned at the end of 88.
Yeah.
So, but lots of adventures, and I must admit, when I was a kid, I kind of got used to it. I sort of felt like it was normal for your dad to be rushing off to India and going out into the bush, and used to bring home ration packs for us. I don't know if you remember. He used to bring home.
Yeah.
And we
always had to bring home something for your kids.
Yeah.
No, the eyeballs.
Yeah. and sometimes it was those plastic ration packs, and we'd get into them and then stick them in the cupboard and go through them slowly after you'd finished eating all the army chocolate and things like that. I still taste that army chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah, chalky stuff. Yeah. But this chapter we're moving into is our return to Canberra. And so I think we were all, Mum and Georgia and I were all pretty happy to go back to Canberra because of all of our friends and things like that we'd made prior. Was there any trepidation about going back down for you?
Oh, not really. It was a little bit daunting, I suppose, to think that I'm going to be working in the headquarters, which was this enormous building full of people doing admin stuff. And I thought, that's why SO3 tea and biscuits became the norm.
Right.
And no, it was all right. I was the only one in the whole floor with any ribbons, any medals. All these Gormlesham majors running around with not a stitch on their clothing.
Right.
But you know, it was fun.
Good. Well, yeah, we had fun, and it was certainly an eventful couple of years. So why don't we get into the reading? So today we'll be reading chapter 41 of Two Ranks on the Road, 35 Years of Australian Special Forces Service by Michael J. Malone, OAM, published in 2024 by Imprimatur Books, Perth. This is a chapter entitled HQSF, covers pages 317 to 326 in the print edition. The ebook may have slightly different numbering, so follow from the beginning of the chapter. As we read, the body of the text will be read by author Mick Malone. Whenever we come across a footnote, we'll pause in the least disruptive way possible, and I'll read the footnote. And now, without further ado, Two Ranks on the Road.
Chapter 41, HQSF, 1989-1990. Old Army Man. It was business as usual for the next few weeks until the posting order was delivered with the salient dates. A friend of ours in Canberra had identified a nice house in Campbell, and we promptly signed the lease. We had a semi-send-off party at Randwick before getting stuck into packing up at Muddimer Road. The kids made their farewells to schools, and we waited for the removalists to arrive. The plan was to move all of our stuff to Canberra into our new house before dark. We got the truck away about 10 a.m. and packed our smalls plus Ace into our two cars and hit the road. It was slow going initially due to bridge traffic, but we made good headway and got to Mittagong for lunch. After lunch, it was plain sailing south to Canberra, arriving just before the removals did. Dispatching the kids and dog to a nearby park, Joe and I supervised where our furniture would go. We leased the house fully furnished, and a lot of our stuff could go into storage. This new place was a far cry from our poky little married quarter at Duntroon, a lovely four-bedroom house with the rent within the GRS for Captain. The kids had their own rooms with a spare room for visiting grandmothers. I had the feeling we were going to be happy here. As Toby was going into year 6, he would go to Campbell Primary, while George chose to go back to St Thomas More. Joe and Kay Blue's business, Truly Lois, was in new hands out at Fishwick, but our friends the Clearys still had Pielago Plant Farm. As our uplift occurred on Friday, we had a weekend to explore. Sunday was War Memorial Day, and we continued to visit there as often as we could. I was to start work at HQSF on the Monday. And it was summer dress, which I dug out and soon had it bogged up, ribbons and all. I rang my boss, Colonel Roberts, and announced our arrival. He was most enthusiastic about me being there. We'd had our differences over the years, but I think there was a respect both ways. I got his permission to come in on Tuesday, as we had to get the kids to school on Monday. The schools were both very welcoming, which was a relief, and it was now down to the kids. As part of the leasing deal, we had to care for a small Australian Terrier named Tiffy. Luckily, she and Ace hit it off and became good mates. Tiffy was an indoor dog who was used to the run of the house, including running along the backs of lounge chairs. Tiffy came to learn that she was actually a dog and formed a strong base bond with Ace. Kids loved her immediately, and she reciprocated. When the kids came home from school, the dogs both went crazy, waggling all over the place. They were fed in the laundry and allowed into the house with nice white carpets throughout. Not a good move, but they were part of our family.
Footnote. 6 months later, Tiffy's owners in America decided they wanted her over there with them. It was arranged, and so we lost Tiffy, much to the grief of our kids and her best mate Ace. We never heard anything further.
I presented myself to G Block Russell officers on my first day and was met by one of the other staff officers, a major, because I was only a lowly captain in the team. Armed with my security pass, I went up to the headquarters SF floor to meet everyone and find my office. I knew them all from SASR days, except the orderly room Jude. On the 25th of January 1989, just before Australia Day, I received a strange phone call from Trevor somebody from Honours and Awards. He apologised profusely for getting your rank wrong in tomorrow's paper. I thought it was a prank call, but he said it was true. I was to be awarded an Order of Australia Medal, OAM, and Australia Day Honours List. He further apologised for me not receiving a letter 3 weeks earlier where I was given a choice to accept the gong or not.
Footnote, this letter is still MIA.
First thing in the morning, I raced down to Campbell Newsagents and bought the Australian and the Canberra Times, Sydney Morning Herald, and the Daily Telegraph. And sure enough, there it was on the OAM list. You could have knocked me over with a feather.
Footnote, Joe and the kids were very excited at breakfast. Toby said, "What's OAM mean, Dad?" And of course I replied, "Old Army Man," which it still is today.
uh, all of this came about after I arced up in the tea room at One Commando over the Vic Barracks gardener getting a gong in the Queen birthday honours awards in '88. In front of my CEO, Phil McNamara, I came out with this stupid statement. They better not offer one of them things to me because I'll tell them where to stick it. Is that right, RSM? He said. He then promptly went to his office and surreptitiously wrote me up for the OAM with a citation for my exemplary service as RSM 1 Commando regiments. Cruel wretch. With humility, I'd been proud to wear the OAM for over 30 odd years. When I went to work the next day, I told Colonel Roberts. He leapt out of his chair and announced that we were going to crack a bottle of champagne there in his office. Congrats all round from the boys. Then it was time to get my buff head back to work. I shared an office with old mate Normie Brown, and it appears we were there as the odd job operators. Normie was now a major, SO2 something or other, and probably Lamingtons and cheesecake. He served in Vietnam as a gunner, RAA, and came to SASR after the war. We were lance corporals together in the early 70s before he packed his bongos and went to Officer Cadet School, OCS, at Portsea. He came back to the regiment in the late 80s as 2IC of the CT Squadron. He was always a genial and fun man to be around. When he was posted, I wondered if I'd see him again, and here he was, sharing an office with me at Headquarters SF. We'd plastered the walls with these highly risque SASR selection posters, and it became a sightseeing thing for all who came down our corridor until one day this officious little female major came in to see them and demanded we take them down immediately, if not sooner. We protested to the boss, but to no avail, as word had come down from Mike Jeffrey to get rid of them. We did as instructed and removed them to be consigned to some archive. I had again relieved Ian Conahan, who had been in HQSF as the RSM. This position was abolished for me to become SO3 Ops, tea and biscuits, and Connie went back to WA and into retirement. His files were sort of redundant, but still required so as to brief the boss on particular senior NCOs who may have been around the place. I was so far down the food chain, the radar would have struggled to pick me up, but it was great sharing an office with Normie, who made this boring bureaucratic life at least tolerable. We spent a lot of the day laughing and talking about the numpties we knew in SAS, mainly officers. Some of the other officers in the headquarters were good blokes like Dennis Cullen, Greg Nance, Marty Hamilton Smith, and a part-timer in Lloyd, Bimbo Beam. Lloyd has served as a troop commander in one SAS squadron in Vietnam and from all accounts nailed it. Dennis Cullen also served in Vietnam in Gordon Simpson's patrol in 2 Squadron in 1968. He was on the patrol when Simpson had his legs blown off with a mine or a booby trap.
Footnote, Gordon Simpson came back to the regiment as adjutant in the early 70s. He was a common sight, stumping up the road on his artificial legs. He went swimming daily in the regiment's pool. Invariably, he'd get to the pool at times when it wasn't manned, so was denied entry by a 6-foot wire fence. Never daunted, he would sit down on the grass, take his clothes off, take his legs off, then haul himself up the wire fence, dropping down on the other side and crawl to the water. He spent an hour swimming and floating before hauling himself out, crawling back to the fence and back up it. Once on the other side, he'd dry himself, get dressed, get his legs back on, and stump off to the mess. What a man.
What a man. My job at the headquarters was one of an advisory role in the main. I wore the Commando Green Beret, as that was my last regimental posting. I kept contact with the OCs of 1 and 2 companies and 126 Squadron and the detachment. I also processed Freedom of Information, FOI requests, and any other dog's body stuff. Norm and I had a 6-window office looking out towards Parliament House. It also overlooked a bus stop, and we witnessed the phenomenon of the mass migration of hundreds of workers queuing up for the 5 p.m. bus. It was quite remarkable to witness these 10 or so buses arriving and swallowing up the many workers. By 5:05, they were all gone. This was a daily occurrence, and we never tired of watching it. I walked to and from work, except when in inclement weather, Joe would drop me off. As the suburb of Canberra was quite close to Russell, it was an easy do. I, at times, walked with one of my neighbours, Lieutenant Colonel Peter Percy, whose wife Helen was a close friend of Joe's. Her brother was Don Barnby, who served at 2 Squadron SAS in Vietnam in 1971. Peter occupied another of those nameless positions in the vast army office. He was either ex-CO 4RAR or soon to be CO. My main focus was to get home to my family each day and plan the weekend. Toby wanted to play cricket, so we took him down to the North Canberra Darramallin Junior Cricket Club and enrolled him. He would be playing in the under-12s. And wouldn't you know it, the team needed a coach, so I reluctantly volunteered my services. What a hoot. It was to be a fun season. We did as well as the unco kids with the bat and ball showed some flair of fielding. Sorry. With Toby, it was a fun thing to be doing. He was always a happy boy on the way home from the game, and we would always stop for ice cream somewhere. Georgia played netball and was pretty good at it as a 10-year-old. She even played one game for the South Canberra under-10s rep side. I would take her there and stand on the sideline with all the coats and scarves. The weather was bitter, with winds sweeping down from the Brindabellas, not enjoyable at all. It was good to be doing things with my family. As a small family with 2 active kids, we spread ourselves fairly thinly. Joe never got to see as many of Toby's cricket games, and I never got to see many of George's netball games. But it was what it was, and we all survived. During this time, Joe worked at the Floriade Flower Festival and conducted classes in stenciling at Pielago Plant Farm. We were settling back in nicely when on one school open day I foolishly entered a 3-legged race with some other fathers and badly tore my hamstring. I went down like I'd been shot. Joe got me home in a sorry state and I was immobile for weeks. It took quite a while to recover, but once back on my feet and feeling less sorry for myself, I went back to work. Daily trips to the physiotherapist weren't much fun and didn't last long before I quit. Both kids activated their future love of theatre and the arts in Canberra. Joe had always taken them to the theatre and music. Now they joined Canberra Youth Theatre, which was a catalyst for their future involvement. Georgia was as the theatre dance arts maker and marketeer, and Toby on the stage and in academia. After 12 months of this non-job, I was beginning to despair for my future. There was one particular staff officer at the headquarters who I never really got on with, although we'd worked together back in SASR. My annual report was below standard and disappointingly was endorsed by the commander. I had hoped to get back to the regiment on my next posting, but a report like this would certainly limit my chances. I heard on the grapevine that the incumbent 2IC of Training Squadron was leaving to a Sabre Squadron as 2IC. So that became the job I set my sights on. I got a call from the adjutant who confirmed my job as 2IC Training Squadron, and I was to hit the ground running in the new year. I immediately applied for a married quarter, probably in or near the barracks. As a captain, they would not be offering me a spot in the wilds of Nollamara or Balga, but we would have to wait and see. As 1990 wore on, three great tragedies befell our family. Firstly, my father, Edmund Ned Malone, died of cancer in the PN hospital at only 70. After a heart attack and surgery, I sat by his bed for a week with his medals pinned on his bed. He was in and out of consciousness, and one day a doctor said um, his vital signs had improved, so I made the decision to get back to my family in Canberra. I had barely walked in the door at home when the phone rang, and it was Mum. You better get back up here. Our old Holden probably couldn't make it back to Penrith, so I hired a car and put in the big ones up the highway. When I got to his room, the bed was empty and freshly made up. I asked where they had taken him. A duty nurse came and told me he'd died about 2 hours ago. I said I wanted to see him, and they took me to the waiting room near the mortuary, where I waited for about an hour, presumably to prep him for my visit. When they wheeled him into the waiting room, he looked at peace. All the pain lines had left his face. I cut a shank of his hair. He had a head of hair right to the end, which I still have. It was a sad day, and I went over to Mum's place to be with her and my sister Helen. I stayed the night and listened to the stories about the dad and their early married life. Before I drove back, I met with my brother-in-law, Mick Ryan, and we visited an undertaker to arrange his burial. Once that was done, I headed back to Canberra. A week later, we packed up our family and headed back to Sydney for the funeral. This was a simple service at Pine Grove Lawn Cemetery. Mum was pretty tough and handled it well. I had no worries about her, as she had Helen, Lou, and others around her to look after her. To make her life easier, she became a DVA war widow, which meant that all her doctor's appointments and medications were covered, and as wasn't 100% herself, this removed a large burden. Secondly, Joe, at 37 years old, was diagnosed with hairy cell leukemia, which he successfully fought for years. This happened just as we were preparing to return to Perth. Joe's doctor in Canberra referred her to one of the great haematologists in Perth, Dr. Richard Herman, who took charge of her treatments from then on. She eventually beat it after a long battle and remained hale and hearty. She's always been a shining example to us all. Finally, we lost our beloved dog, Hebron Black Ace, at 15. He had been a loving and loyal dog the whole of our married life and would be sorely missed. The day I took him down to the vet was a sad one indeed. Our kids were devastated as he was a beloved family member and had been there for their whole lives. I was not very popular for quite a while. We would never be able to have another dog, although, as I write this, I would love to have an old dog curled up at my feet. Jo was doing quite well and was finalising her book, Stenciling, which would come out in 1991.
Footnote, with the royalties, we invested in a plush leather lounge, which we still have.
Books were a major fixture in my life. It was this time I put the pieces together about how they would play a major role. I met the great Ken White, the military bookseller, when I took him a box of David Horner's new SAS book, Phantoms of the Jungle, and was introduced to the Aladdin's Cave, a house chock-a-block full of books. I'd never seen anything like it. The house was full of military books. His wife had a lounge chair and a TV in the bedroom, but every other room was filled with books. He was a mail order catalogue dealer and was known as the source of all the rare unit histories. I got home that night and announced to Joe, I know what I'm going to do when I get out of the army.
Footnote. And so it came to pass in 1993 with the birth of Imprimatur Books.
Years later, I offered to buy Ken's collection when I heard he was selling up, but he wanted silly money. And so that was that. Eventually sold to a pair of young people in Canberra. So I thought no more about it. And when Ken died, I heard his daughter had consigned the remainder of his collection to an auction house in Melbourne. I got a copy of the auction catalogue and was stunned to see that all the best unit histories were listed. The old scoundrel, I thought Joe immediately booked a flight for me to Melbourne, and I rang an old mate, Brian Vickers McDougall, to see if I could stay with him for the weekend. When I got there, the auction room was heaving with all the heavy hitters in attendance. I sat in the front, ready to spend the 10K I had bought, but promptly went crazy and spent over 22,000. Joe was not a happy camper, but I promised I'd double our money in 3 months, which I did. In addition to what I got at the auction, I had a fair collection of my own,
Footnote. My day one policy was everything is for sale. No room for the sentimental in this game.
which I could use as a basis for my proposed catalogues. The only thing missing was a mailing database, but this would soon be rectified in due course, right after we made the final move back to Perth. End of chapter.
And that was chapter 41 from Two Ranks on the Road, 35 Years of Australian Special Forces Service by Michael J. Malone, as read by the author. Good times. So that's the
Right.
entire 2 years we're in Canberra in 9 pages.
Yeah.
9 pages for 2 years. Those are fairly formative years. For me and George, I remember those important times.
Yeah, it was an important time for you kids, especially. And me, getting a glimpse of the bureaucratic nightmare that the whole army office has become.
Yeah,
Uh, I didn't look forward to going to work most days, but it was what it was, and I
yeah.
survived.
I always find that interesting. It's a case in most industries that the good workers, you get promoted, you get promoted, you get promoted until you get promoted so high that you're not doing the job that you were good at anymore. You,
Mm.
you're pushing paper around the desk and
Yeah, yeah.
managing other people. It's the same in academia. My old academia career was, if you get a professorship and then you get promoted to assistant professor, the only place to go from there is to associate dean. And if you're associate dean, you stop teaching. um, you
Mm.
know, and you spend all your time doing disciplinary stuff and plagiarism and things like that. Or my wife is a high school teacher and she's been tapped on the shoulder to become a principal in sometime in the future, but that means she would have to stop teaching and she would spend all the time doing admin stuff. So how does it feel to sort of be? Does it feel like you've been put out to pasture when you put into an office like that?
Well, it does. It does feel like you've been put out to pasture, but my big miss was the RSM of SAS. That when I missed that, I thought, uh-oh,
Hmm.
um, I'm not going to do very well here. But I sort of made the job my own at headquarters SF,
Hmm.
um, dealing with Mike Jeffrey upstairs. He was the Major General in charge of tea and biscuits, I think.
Yeah, and the future Governor General.
Yeah, yeah,
He presented me with my grade 12 graduation um,
yeah.
certificate at Scotch College. Serendipitously, he just happened to.
That was a big deal, wasn't it?
Yeah. So you keep talking about tea and biscuits and cheesecake and lamingtons. So what what do you mean? What do you mean by that? If for the listener who's not
It
really sure,
means we're just nobodies, as compared to all the rest of them, all the majors and all the half colonels in the place.
and so your job was to go and get the biscuits in for
No, we did none of that. But it's just a saying.
right.
SO3 tea and biscuits.
Yeah, but yeah,
And
I mean, but very quickly you moved up in status in the world when you were awarded the OAM. So that was a big deal. You must have been the only tea
yeah,
and biscuits bloke there with an OAM on your on your
it was
lapel.
a big deal. It was a big deal.
I re
No one else in the headquarters had a gong.
It was very exciting time when you won that.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
so
it was. It was very exciting, as evidenced by the amount of newspapers I bought down the local news
I
agents.
remember you got up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember getting up in the morning and you coming out and the newspaper spread all over the house.
What's
And
OAM?
yeah, old army man. Yeah. But that was always the joke in the regiment, wasn't it? If anyone
Yeah,
had an OAM, that meant old army man.
yeah, yeah.
So
That
yeah,
was.
but yeah, and then you got to go to Government House and you were presented the gong from Ninny and Stephen, the Governor General, and um, pretty exciting times. There's some photos in the book here uh, that sort of chronicle that time. There's an image on page 319. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see here, but otherwise, you'll be able to see on the screen there. Yeah, page 319. There's you resplendent in your with your gong pinned on you, with along with my mum. Both of you looking very young.
Yeah,
Um,
like young as.
yeah, I mean, mum was only 37 there, and that was before she got
Yeah,
crook.
yeah.
So yeah, which we'll talk about in a bit. And then there's another picture there of you resplendent with your gong again,
I
all
was looking
dressed
pretty
up,
slim there
very slim. Yeah, that's it. And then who's that?
with the general.
Yeah, so there on the in the screen, yeah, you with General Gray at Government House.
Mm.
He's looking like he's seeing if there's anyone else he can talk to. He's looking over. And then there's also an image of this of the whole group, headquarters special forces there on the next page. So I'm also very aware that as a listener, this isn't much fun listening to people discuss pictures that you can't see. But yeah, a group there, lots of sandy berets, lots of blokes who've done plenty of things over the years. But plenty of people who I remember very clearly from my childhood.
Yeah.
So so the OAM was a big deal, and it was one of those things that you weren't expecting, which made it all the better.
Oh, mate, didn't it what?
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I'm very proud to wear it. No two ways about that.
yeah. Oh, well earned. I don't think it's anything anyone could question. You certainly had a career, and that's why we're here talking about this today.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's good to get that. And there's nothing worse
Sort
than
of dotted
someone.
the I and crossed the T's, yeah, the OM.
Yeah, well, yeah. We've talked in the past about John Matten being overlooked for a gong for political reasons, and that rankles when there's something where you think, oh, someone should have been recognised and it wasn't. So it's nice to be recognised here, and I'm, I'm glad that Phil McNamara put the wind up you by nominating you for it. It's a good one.
Bloody hell out.
Yeah. Um, And so yeah, plenty of lots of things that we did as a family. But like we said, that year was also very eventful because we lost your father um, at that time. We've talked a little bit about him in the past. And when he died, you were uh, just 43, so you're a few years younger than I am now. But now you're 8 years older than he was
Yeah,
when he
he
when
was only 70.
Yeah. And so you're 78 now, and you were saying to me the other day that your grandfather, who you'd always described as being this old bloke, um, and he died on Christmas Day. It was at 1955, did you say?
1955.
Yeah.
Um, and you'd always described him as this ancient old bloke, but then the other day he said, well, he was only 79 when he died. Um, so it's amazing what age means to different
Yeah.
generations.
I'm going to be
So
the eldest Malone, um,
yeah,
ever, as far as I know.
yeah, we'll have to go back through the. We have a cousin, Angela Stewart, who's our family historian. We'll have to get her to run the pencil over to see who anyone if anyone beats you. Yeah, the Malones. I guess that there were some old blokes over in the other side of the family, Cocky and all those guys were some.
Oh, they never got to that sort of age. Cocky was about 72.
Is he? Oh.
Um, most of those guys, the 70s was as good as it got.
Yeah, and so getting to 70, it was a real shock when so your father's name was Ned Malone, or we called him Fardy. It was
Yeah.
a bit of a shock. We knew he was sick, but we didn't really realize how serious it was, and that was the first funeral that Georgia and I had ever been to because we weren't allowed to go to Uncle Ross's funeral 5 years earlier. So I remember that going up from Canberra to Sydney for that funeral and being a very traumatic day for us.
Yeah, it was.
Not really realizing it was going to be as hard as it wound up being. Um, but yeah, yeah, very hard and very hard. I think it was harder on my cousins, um, Peter and Sean and Louise, because they were
Oh, they
much
were close.
closer, and that was probably and that was all to do with just proximity, just geography.
Yeah. He lived there with them. He saw them every day, just about.
Yeah,
Whereas we were the country cousins.
yeah. So yeah, so that was a tough one, and losing your father like that sort of really
Yeah.
knocked you around a little bit.
Yeah, he had one of those cancers they can't operate on,
Hmm.
pancreatic.
Yeah.
Um,
Although
but anyway,
it's likely if he'd had the same thing today, there was probably some kind of a he probably would have lived a lot
oh,
longer.
they'd be able to fix him today.
Yeah. Yeah. So, cancer's knocked our family around a lot. Um, as we've talked about, we lost Georgia earlier in the year, and we lost your father, um, and then Mum got sick toward the end of our time in Canberra when she got cancer, and we were really sheltered from the reality of it. I think we all thought, oh well, she'll get better, but it was touch and go.
It was. But the hematologist here in Perth, he sorted it out. He really had a handle on the treatment.
Hmm.
And it's just the way it was.
Yeah, yeah, and she's
Mum's
yeah.
resilience was amazing.
Yeah, she's a real fighter, and she never
Yeah,
believed that it was going to get her, and which is exactly what happened with Georgia. We just all believed, well, it's never going to get her, and
yeah,
sometimes it wins,
yeah.
but yeah, we came pretty close to losing Mum when I was 12 or 13. And it would have been a a whole different life. Can you imagine
It would,
raising us kids by yourself?
would have been me trying to raise two kids. What can't imagine.
Immediately remarried to some woman named Sharon or Narelle?
The real. I don't know the real.
No, not yet, not yet. You have to go down to the grabber granny. So yeah, and then the other loss of that year was Ace when Ace was put down. It's one of the dark memories of my childhood. Um, because we had this little terrier dog who was much more exciting than Ace because Ace he had this arthritis in his hips, so he couldn't get up and down the stairs in the backyard. And we had the cat and we had the little dog, and they were kind of more interesting. So we kind of we neglected him, and then
Yeah,
you said you basically said, oh, he's in pain and just going to take him. And I'll never forget it when, you know, at the time when you said to us, you kids hated him by the end. And we didn't, but we didn't know any better, I don't think. I think we always just assumed that he was always going to be there.
Yeah.
And you did the right
He
thing.
was 15 after all.
No, it was 12. Oh, he was 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was 15. So he was an old man. Um, and if you had have said to us, oh, I'm going to take Ace to the vet to get, you know, put him down, um, we would have cracked up and you would have made it very hard on you. So you did the right thing by doing it without telling us. But yeah, we were pretty dirty at the time.
Yeah. What was your classic statement? You had no right.
Well,
Um,
yeah, yeah, I don't
it
know.
was a tragic time. He was the most beloved member of the family
Yeah,
until you kids came along, of course.
yeah,
Um,
but
AC Pops.
but he had a good life and he was beloved by everyone and
Yeah.
yeah and yeah, he was comfortable and well looked after, and he didn't feel anything at the end. So it's all okay, but yeah, it was hard days. But
Yeah, it's not a good memory to have,
no,
losing him, but it's a good
yeah,
memory to
but
have
what
that we had him.
yeah, but one of the good memories that came up after this is that transition into founding Imprimatur Books. That
Mm,
the aha moment where you said, "I can do
mm,
this," and you did. You were a book dealer for 30. Well, you were a book dealer for longer than you were in the military
yeah,
in the end.
35.
Yeah, 35 years as a book dealer, which ended this past year. Um, 2024, 25 was you sold Imprimatur Books, but that ended up being an amazing journey, buying these books and selling them, and the house used to be just full of them, full of books.
Mm.
Um, and then
No,
yeah,
284 catalogues.
and then a publishing arm and all sorts of things. Yeah, and then that's where this book came from. So it's quite a remarkable journey, and really, we should on the front cover of this book, we should have a picture of you as a book dealer, not as a soldier, because you spent more time doing
Yeah, yeah.
that.
Nobody would have bought the book.
No, that's true. That's
That
true.
photo,
Yeah,
that photo's famous.
yeah, the photo on the front there. Yeah, but it said two ranks on the road, 35 years of Australian book dealing. Probably wouldn't go over as well.
True.
Yeah, that's it. Well, that's great. Yeah, lots of things in that chapter, and it was an eventful 2 years, but still only got 9 pages. But we'll see. We have another short chapter in the next one where we're going to do another 2 years in for your last 2 years in the army. But we'll get to that in the next episode. But that is all the time we have this week for Never Die Wondering. Join us next week for the next installment in our exploration of Mick Malone's career as we get into the 42nd chapter of the book entitled 2IC Training Squadron. If you have a copy of Two Ranks, read along with us. I've been Toby Malone, and thank you to Mick Malone for officiously joining me on this journey.
My pleasure, mate.
This has been Never Die Wondering, Mick Malone in his own words. For links to purchase your own copies of Mick's books, visit the show notes or mickmalone.com.au. This podcast is produced by Toby Malone, Joe Malone and Mick Malone, and engineered by Toby Malone. Theme music is The Happy Wanderer, the official SAS march, as reimagined by Cormac Malone and Meg Logue Malone. Yes, this is a family affair. This is a GM production in association with Imprimatur Books.